Ever feel like, I don't know about you, but I feel like sometimes the internet's got me totally figured out. Like it knows what I'm thinking before I even...
It's kind of creepy, right?
It is. It's like, how did they know that I was thinking about buying like a new pair of shoes or something? But anyway, today we are diving deep, and I mean deep, into the world of big tech.
Yeah.
To unpack their influence, how much power they really have,
Right.
we're using The Digital Puppeteers as our guide.
Okay.
It's by Enrique Aurelli.
I like that title.
That title.
The Digital Puppeteers.
It really grabs you.
Yeah.
It grabs you. And you know what else is interesting about this is that Aurelli actually got the idea for this book from, wait for it, Peter Schiff.
Oh, wow. Interesting.
Yeah, Peter Schiff, the economist, gold investor.
Yeah?
Not your typical...
Not someone you'd think is really up on all this stuff.
Yeah, like, oh, big tech, they're the devil. Well, he's not saying that at all.
Right.
But it just makes this deep dive even more interesting because it's coming from a different perspective.
I see, yeah. So what does Aurelli say? What's his main argument?
So Aurelli, his big argument is, and I think we can all agree with this, is that technology, it's always kind of shaped humanity.
Oh, for sure.
But the speed at which it's happening now...
That's different.
That's the thing. That's where it gets a little scary.
Yeah. Like how quickly things change now compared to even like a generation ago.
Totally. It's like the internet went from 0 to 60 in the blink of an eye. And Aurelli, he actually points out that even huge shifts, like massive shifts, like the printing press, the Industrial Revolution, they took decades,
right,
even centuries, to really like fully play out, to really like reshape society.
Right.
But this tech boom, we're living it in real time.
And we're swimming in it.
We're swimming in it, yeah. And it just makes his point about technology really only benefiting those who dominate it.
Oh, interesting.
It makes you think.
It makes it scarier. You know what I mean?
It makes it scarier, right? It's like, who really holds the reins in this whole digital rodeo?
Yeah. That's always the question, isn't it?
Yeah. Because Aurelli, he throws out some statistics that are really staggering.
Okay.
Like, just think about it. Google. Google basically is the internet for most people.
That's true.
That's scary. Then you've got Meta with billions of users.
Billions across all their platforms.
Billions across Facebook, Instagram.
That's hard to even imagine, right?
Yeah. And Amazon. I mean, forget about trying to shop anywhere else, right?
Prime has got me.
Prime has got you.
It's so convenient.
It's so convenient.
Maybe too convenient.
It is too convenient. If it's not on Amazon Prime, it might as well not exist.
Right.
But it's more than just convenience at this point, right?
I mean,
it's not just about getting your toilet paper delivered to your door in 2 hours.
Okay.
It's influencing what we see, what we decide to buy, what we even allow ourselves to think about.
Oh, I see what you're saying. It's like they're shaping our desires.
All right. It's shaping our desires, yeah.
Not just fulfilling the ones we already have.
Exactly. It's like they're getting in our heads, but it's in a way that we don't even realize.
And then there's this whole other layer that Aurelli talks about. He calls it opaque financing, where you have all these governments and private investors with their fingers in the pie.
Yeah. It's like this tangled web, right?
Right. And Aurelli says that lack of transparency, it raises some red flags, right?
Right.
Like, what are they hiding? Who are they really beholden to?
Exactly. It's like this whole other layer of the internet that most of us don't even see. We just see the, like, shiny surface.
The tip of the iceberg.
Yeah, exactly. And Aurelli says it gets even bigger than that. He says, listen, this isn't just about money or convenience.
Okay.
This is impacting the very fabric of, and I'm going to use his words here, our liberal democracies.
Okay, now we're getting into some interesting territory. So how does that work? How does tech influence something as big as democracy?
Well, he argues that, think about it like political discourse, how we talk about politics, the news we consume.
Yeah.
It's all happening online.
Right.
Like pretty much exclusively online now.
Yeah, especially for like younger generations.
Oh, absolutely. And he makes this analogy to like a digital Roman circus.
Oh, interesting.
Right, where it's like we're just constantly bombarded with information,
Right.
much of which is being manipulated or at least skewed to fit a certain narrative.
So it's not just that we're getting our information online, it's that the way information is presented, the way it's filtered, even the way it's shared,
Yeah.
that's influencing our understanding of the world and our place in it.
It's like our attention is the most valuable currency.
Oh, for sure.
And everybody wants a piece of it.
And they're willing to do whatever it takes to get it.
Exactly.
And it's not just politics either. He's talking about like every aspect of our lives.
Exactly. Like consumer behavior. Forget about it.
Oh, right. Tracked, analyzed, every click, every purchase.
Yeah. They're using that data to predict our every move. And then you think about social interactions, like try dating these days without a dating app.
Oh, I can't even imagine.
Could you imagine? Or like relying on snail mail to stay in touch with family and friends.
Oh, that's a nightmare.
It's unthinkable now, but it really highlights how much we've come to rely on technology to mediate these relationships, these experiences.
And that dependency, that's where the problems start.
It's scary. It really is kind of scary how much we rely on these companies, especially when you start talking about censorship, which Aurelli gets into as well.
Oh, yeah, the big one.
It's a big one. He brings up, for example, the Hunter Biden laptop story.
Right.
And the attempted assassination of former President Trump.
Yeah. Those are both big stories.
Big stories. And he's not saying, oh, this happened or this didn't happen or this side was right, this side was wrong.
Right.
But he's saying these instances raise concerns.
About what?
About potential bias and suppression of information.
Right. Because if they can suppress that, what else are they suppressing?
Exactly. And who gets to decide what we see and what we don't?
Yeah. Who are these people?
It shouldn't be up to a handful of tech companies, should it?
That's a good question. And Aurelli, he takes it even further.
Oh, he does.
He does. He brings up Argentina.
Argentina.
Yeah, Argentina. And their struggles with their internet infrastructure.
I would not have put those two things together.
It seems random, but it's not.
Okay.
It speaks to this bigger issue of who really controls the internet and how easy it is for that control to be used in ways that maybe we don't want it to be used.
I'm intrigued. Tell me more about Argentina. Like, what's going on there?
So basically, they've been trying to take back some control of their internet, pushing back against the dominance of these big tech companies.
Okay.
And it's turned into this whole thing, like a battle over internet access, affordability. Who gets to call the shots?
So it's not just about, like, what we see online. It's also about who has the power to shape the internet itself.
Exactly. Who has their hands on the controls?
And that takes us to Aureli's next point, which is all about Section 230.
Okay. Section 230, that's a big one. A lot of people are talking about that.
Yeah, it's a big one. It's a piece of U.S. legislation that's become a huge, huge point of contention.
Right, because it's about content moderation.
Yeah.
Who gets to decide what stays up and what gets taken down?
Right. So for those of us who don't have law degrees,
right,
can you break it down?
So imagine a shield, okay?
Okay.
That's what Section 230 was supposed to be. It was supposed to be a shield for these online platforms, protecting them from being held liable for what their users post.
Okay, that makes sense. You don't want to, like, hold a website responsible for every comment someone leaves.
Right. So the idea was this is going to encourage free speech. It'll encourage innovation online. People will be able to say what they want, share what they want, and these platforms won't be constantly worried about getting sued.
Sounds good in theory.
Right. Sounds good on paper.
But Aureli doesn't think it's that simple.
What does he say?
He says this shield has become a weapon.
How so?
It allows these platforms to censor or even promote certain types of content without any consequences.
Interesting. So it's like they have all this power, but no responsibility.
It's like they're playing both sides. And often, he argues, they're doing it in ways that benefit their own interests or align with certain political agendas.
I see. So it's not really a neutral playing field then, is it?
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's like, are we really in control of our online experience?
Or are we just playing by someone else's rules?
It's a good question, right? It's a really, really important question to be asking ourselves. Because if these companies have so much control over what we see and do online, can we really say that we have free will in this digital space?
That is a question worth considering.
It's a little unsettling, honestly, when you really start to think about it. And it sounds like Aureli's not going to let us off easy. He's not giving us, like, these simple, easy solutions.
Like, what does he say?
Well, he pushes back against this idea of just breaking up big tech or throwing more regulations at the problem.
Okay, so no simple solutions.
No.
I mean, it's a complex issue.
Right. And he's saying these old solutions.
Yeah.
They're like trying to fit a square peg into a round hole.
Exactly. It's like, can you really break up a company like Google? I mean, they have their hands in everything.
It's true. Search, email, maps, phones, AI. I mean, the list goes on and on.
It does. And even if you could break them up, would that even solve the core problem?
Right. So what does he suggest?
Well, that's where it gets really interesting.
Okay.
He calls for what he calls deeply democratic solutions.
Okay. I'm intrigued, but also, like, a little confused. What does that even look like in practice?
Right. How do you make the internet Deeply democratic. That's the million-dollar question.
Yeah.
And I appreciate that he doesn't pretend to have all the answers.
Right.
It's easy to get caught up in the doom and gloom. Oh, it's hopeless. They're too powerful. But it's in these moments, I think, that we as users need to start thinking differently.
Like more creatively, more proactively.
Exactly. Like, if we're uncomfortable with the level of control these companies have, what are we willing to do about it? That's the question we all need to be asking ourselves.
Okay. I like that. So it's less about like, let's just smash it all down, get rid of it all, and more about how do we reshape it? How do we reimagine it?
Right. How do we take back some of that power?
Right. So what are some ways that we can do that? What can we do? Like, besides, throwing our phones into the ocean and living off the grid.
Well, that's always an option, I guess.
Yeah.
But for those of us who aren't quite ready to go full on, like, digital detox,
right,
there are smaller steps we can take that can still make a difference.
Like what? Give us the game plan.
It starts with awareness.
Yeah.
Right. Understanding how these platforms work, how our data is being used, the potential consequences of the choices we're making online. And then, once we have that awareness, we can start making more conscious decisions.
So like voting with our clicks, kind of.
Yeah, exactly. Supporting companies and organizations that align with our values, right? Opting for privacy-focused alternatives when possible. Being more mindful of the information we're putting out there.
Right. It's about taking back control, not letting convenience always be the deciding factor.
Exactly. And remember, it's not about being perfect.
Oh, thank goodness.
It's about making progress, It's about sending a message that we're not content with the way things are.
I like it. So individual action is important, but Aurelli also talks about the role of government, right?
He does. But again, not in the way that you might expect.
What do you mean?
Well, he talks about this need for, like, a more nuanced approach to regulation.
Okay.
One that goes beyond just, like, breaking up these tech giants or imposing all these new rules.
Okay, so what does he propose?
He talks about deeply democratic governance of the internet.
Okay. What does that mean?
So it means involving citizens in the decision-making process, fostering greater transparency and accountability, basically making sure that technology serves the common good, not just the interests of a select few.
I mean, it's a lofty goal, for sure, but it feels like we're talking about like a fundamental shift in how we think about technology and its role in society.
Right. And that's the conversation that we need to be having.
Yeah, it's not just a tech issue, it's a human issue.
Exactly. And the more we engage in these conversations, the more we educate ourselves and each other, the better equipped we'll be to navigate this whole thing.
It's a call to action, really, for the digital age.
It is.
And it starts with each and every one of us.
Absolutely.
So what does a world look like where technology empowers instead of exploits? What would that actually look like?
That's a great question. And it's a question I think that we need to be asking ourselves more and more.
Because it's not just about the technology itself, it's about the values that underpin it.
You got it.
And how we choose to use it. It's about reclaiming our digital agency and shaping a future where technology works for us, not the other way around.
I love that. It's about reclaiming our digital agency. That's what it all comes down to.
It's like we're trying to fix a smartphone with a hammer and chisel.
I know, right? It's like we're trying to solve 21st century problems with these outdated tools. And that's why Aurelli's whole thing about deeply democratic solutions is so, so interesting.
Okay, but I gotta be honest. I'm still a little fuzzy on what that actually looks like. How do we make the internet more deeply democratic? Like, is there a user manual for this?
Well, Aurelli doesn't exactly give us a step-by-step guide, and I think that's part of his point. He wants us to really wrestle with this, to move beyond these quick fixes and grapple with how complex it really is. But he does offer some interesting paths we could take.
Okay, I like where this is going. Lay some knowledge on me.
One of the first things he talks about is, like, we need way more transparency from these tech companies. Imagine if we could actually see how these algorithms are deciding what shows up on our news feeds.
Right, like, how do they know I'm thinking about buying a new pair of shoes?
Exactly. Or how that data we hand over so freely, how is it being used to target us with ads? It's like this big mystery.
Okay, yeah. That would be a game changer, more transparency.
Right. Like, let's lift the hood on these things. We hand over so much control, we need more say in our digital lives.
And that's where we, the users, come in, right? Aurelli seems to think we have way more power than we realize.
We do. We absolutely do. He says we've gotten way too comfortable, too willing to just accept things as they are. But, and this is important, these companies, they need us. They need our data. They need us scrolling and liking and engaging We're not just helpless bystanders here.
Okay, I feel a but coming on.
But knowing that and actually doing something about it are two different things.
You think people are ready to put down their phones and really fight for this?
Well, it doesn't have to be throw your phone in the ocean drastic. Yeah. There are smaller things we can do every day that, when we all do them together, can actually make a real difference.
I am all ears.
Start by paying attention. Look at your privacy settings. Be more conscious of the information you're putting out there for everyone to see. And seriously, mix it up. Branch out from your curated social media bubble and check out different news sources.
Okay, so like swap out some of those clickbaity articles on my Facebook feed for like a real news website.
Bingo. And support those organizations out there fighting for digital rights and privacy. Let's push for these companies to be held accountable for the impact they have on all of us. We can demand better, you know?
It's like we have to retrain ourselves to see the internet, not just as this like fun distraction, but as this powerful tool that we need to be way more thoughtful about how we're using.
100%. We have to stop letting convenience be the only thing that matters.
It's bigger than just us. Aurelli talks about the role of government in all this too, right?
It does. And it's not your typical, the government needs to step in and fix everything argument.
So what's he saying?
He's talking about deeply democratic governance.
Okay, you're going to have to unpack that one for me.
Basically, we need to figure out a way to get everyday people like you and me involved in the decision-making process when it comes to the internet. We need a system that's more transparent, more accountable, and genuinely designed to make sure technology benefits everyone, not just a handful of powerful companies.
That makes sense. We can't just keep slapping on these Band-Aid solutions and expect things to magically get better. We need a fundamental shift in how we think about all of it. Technology, its place in the world.
Exactly. And that's not an easy conversation to have.
So where do we even start?
It starts by acknowledging that technology isn't inherently good or bad. It's just a tool, and like any tool, it can be used for good or bad. What matters is who's holding the tools and what they decide to do with them.
And that's a discussion everyone needs to be a part of. It can't just be left up to the tech people and the politicians to figure out. This impacts all of us.
100%. And the more we talk about this, the more we learn and share that knowledge, the better chance we have of figuring this whole thing out. This is uncharted territory.
It's kind of overwhelming when you really think about it. But it also feels kind of exciting. Like we have this opportunity to shape the future of the internet, to make it what we want it to be.
It's definitely a challenge, but it's also a huge opportunity.
So how do we move from feeling overwhelmed and helpless to actually feeling empowered? Like what can we do? Where do we even begin?
It's tough, right? It's easy to feel like anything we do is just a drop in the ocean, especially with these massive companies calling the shots.
Exactly. Like, what can I do? I'm just one person. What kind of difference can I really make? It's like David versus Goliath, but instead of a slingshot, all I've got is my smartphone.
That's a really common feeling, but remember what Aurelli kept coming back to, that idea of deeply democratic solutions. It really does start with us becoming more informed, being more engaged, being willing to question things. We can't just sit back and expect someone else to fix this.
So it's kind of like knowledge is power. The more I understand about how these companies operate, the more power I have.
Exactly. The more you know about how these platforms work, how your data is being used, the good, the bad, and the ugly, the more you can start to make choices that align with your values. Knowledge really is power, especially in this digital age.
Okay, that makes sense. But it still feels kind of abstract. What are some actual things people can do, like today, in their own digital lives?
Start with the basics. Take a good look at your privacy settings. Those things can be confusing, but it's worth taking the time to really understand them. And then just think before you post. Be mindful of what information you're putting out there for the whole world to see. It's not always easy, but the more aware you are, the more you can start to make different choices.
Right. It's like, think before you post and diversify your media diet a bit.
Exactly. Don't just scroll through the same old social media feeds. Seek out different perspectives, find some new voices. There are so many great independent media outlets out there doing really important work.
It's about being more intentional with what we're consuming, not just letting the algorithms decide for us.
And it's not just about what we do online, it's also about who we support. There are amazing organizations out there fighting tooth and nail for digital rights and privacy. Those organizations need our support. They need our voices.
So donate to a good cause, sign a petition, share an article. There are a lot of ways to get involved.
And let's not forget about the power we have as consumers. Let's demand better from these companies. We can hold their feet to the fire by demanding more transparency, more accountability. They rely on our data, on our attention. If enough of us speak up, They'll have to listen.
Aurelli really wants us to remember that early internet optimism, that sense of possibility of connection.
He does. And for good reason. It's easy to get bogged down in all the negativity, but it's important to remember that the internet, for all its flaws, still holds so much potential. It's up to us to steer it in the right direction.
It's like that old saying, be the change you want to see in the world, but apply that to the digital realm.
I love that. Be the change you want to see online. It starts with each and every one of us.
Well, this deep dive has been enlightening, to say the least. A little overwhelming, but also really inspiring.
Aureli's work definitely makes you think. And even though he doesn't hand us all the answers, it gives us the questions we need to be asking.
He really challenges us to step up, to recognize that we have more power than we realize, and to take responsibility for the future of the internet.
Because it's not just some abstract thing. It's the world we live in now.
It is. It's our world. And it's up to us to shape it.
Well said.
Thank you so much for joining us on this incredible deep dive.
This was fun.
And to all of you listening, we hope you learned something new today. And more importantly, we hope this inspires you to get involved, to use your voice, to be the change. Until next time, stay curious.